Welcome, everybody, to this episode of The Monthly Blend, a monthly video podcast brought to you by Next, powered by Shulman Rogers, and the Big Idea CONNECTpreneur community. I'm Tian Wong, founder and host of the Big Idea CONNECTpreneur community, which is a global community of over 25,000 investors, founders, business leaders from around the world. And I'm also the CEO of Opus 8, and we help companies and alternative investment managers raise money through our network of over 3,200 accredited private investors, angels, and family offices throughout the United States. Along with my co-host, Anthony Millen, who's the founder and chair of Next, powered by Shulman Rogers, we are pleased to bring you this monthly video podcast, which covers trends, informations, interesting research and tidbits, as well as fascinating interviews with game changers and newsmakers here in the DC, Baltimore region. Anthony and I started this podcast about a year and a half ago as a way to increase awareness of cool, innovative happenings in our region, to break down silos, and to serve as a mechanism to do our part to help bring the region together and to help foster innovation and entrepreneurship here. Today, we are absolutely thrilled to have a conversation with two pillars of the Baltimore DMV networking community, Derek Coburn, co-founder of Cadre, and Mark Haas, CEO and co-founder of AEG. Cadre and AEG are by far the leading groups of remarkable professionals, and I'm a proud charter member of Cadre and a proud investor and advisor to AEG. I'd love to give Derek and Mark the opportunity to self-introduce themselves a little more fully. Derek, why don't we start with you? Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Tian. It's great to be here. So quick bio for me. I have been a financial advisor since 1998 and sold my wealth management practice to Hub International in 2019. I'm still employed by them, still enjoying working with my clients. And in 2011, I started Cadre with my wife and business partner, Melanie Coburn. Really, I had about 350 to 400 wealth management clients at the time. I was talking with a lot of advisors who were 10, 15, 20 years further down the road from me. They all had 2,000 clients, and almost to a person, they all enjoyed working with about 20% of them. And this was at a time when social media and influencer marketing, word of mouth marketing was really taking off. And just like in the legal profession, the financial advisor world, we were really limited with what we could do. It was hard to write blog posts. You still to this day cannot have testimonials. And I wanted to sort of take advantage of that. And so I cut my clients down to about 75 at the time and decided to use the time as a way to bring professionals and thought leaders in the area together around events, conversations, and it's evolved quite a bit since then, which I'm sure we'll get into a little bit, but that's a quick background on me.
Thank you so much, Derek. I will say that Cadre is the most amazing networking group I've ever been a part of, and it's a tribute to you and Melanie, probably mostly Melanie, to be honest.
Yeah.
But you guys have done a great job, and you're doing great things. And we look forward to learning more about Cadre in this podcast. Mark, how about yourself? Do you mind saying a few words about yourself and AEG?
Sure. Thanks, Anthony and Tian, for having me on. AEG is, I've been a management consultant for 40 years and advising CEO boards here and abroad. Also a trainer, facilitator for some interesting clients. And the one thing I found is that there was a real need in the marketplace for, basically it's an ecosystem of business advisors because business is getting pretty complex and you need a team of people rather than a single practitioner, kind of like healthcare. And so my partner, John Yetman, and I co-founded CEO a few years ago. We brought on Tian, who's been a fabulous and incessant, that's a good word, advisor to the group. And we've grown in DC, expanded to Baltimore, and now we're expanding to Tampa, and we're going to go nationwide.
Thank you so much, Mark. And now I'd love to turn things over to Anthony Millen, my co-host, who will cover the first segment of this podcast. Anthony is an entrepreneur. He's a venture capitalist with a national VC fund, and he's also one of the nation's leading startup attorneys. He's founder and chair of Next, powered by Shulman Rogers. And Next is disrupting the way legal services are being delivered with a unique fixed price structure that allows for expert legal advice at a fixed cost. It's very reasonable, especially for early stage companies. Next was recently selected by Legal Week as Startup Law Firm of the Year, beating out several huge and well-known law firms. Congratulations, Anthony.
Great. Thank you, Tien, and thanks, Mark and Derek, for joining us today. Where I'd like to start off today is we've had a number of guests on our show in the past year who have listed networking and connectivity as an important feature or aspect of the local ecosystem. You both have leading organizations that covers that type of area. And it would be great to hear how your respective networking organizations fit into the local ecosystem. And Mark, why don't we start with you?
Sure. I think it's never been more true. When we say it's not what you know, it's who you know. And I think the ability to connect to others is really important, both personally and professionally. I said before, it's business is really complex, and as good as you are, you can't really solve problems on your own. So there's a lot of space for new entrants in the marketplace. Some, like Cadre, last a long time and are well known. Others occupy small niches. So, and AEG is kind of similar to Cadre in some ways. Our mission is literally to create personal and business growth through trusted relationships. But what makes us slightly different is that there's implicitly a larger focus on strengthening local economies, providing owners with the route through not just solving an immediate problem, but through growth, exit, and building personal wealth. So we're partnering or are developing partnerships with regional groups like the Greater Washington Board of Trade, economic development organizations, and business media, and trade groups.
Great. Thanks, Mark. We've always been so impressed and excited to see what AEG is doing and leading in this area. Derek, you've been able to kind of sustain and grow and be successful through many different cycles and events with Cadre. How have you positioned Cadre in the local business ecosystem?
Yeah, thanks, Anthony. We've changed quite a bit. And, one thing I will say is, when we first started out, we were purely an unnetworking community. We hosted 75 lunches in 2011, bringing together anywhere from 6 to 12 people to exchange ideas, ask for help, share more about their business. And we still do that, but it's really just once a quarter now. A lot of what we are doing is trying to find ways to bring people together to go deeper around topics and have conversations and to develop and deepen meaningful relationships with each other. And the way that we've grown is we've asked our members, what they want more of and what they want less of. And fortunately for us, they've always wanted more of and less of the things that we wanted to do more and less of, respectively. If all of our members had said we want to keep doing the business networking thing all the time, we probably would not be in existence right now. Regarding the local aspect, we had 78 members in March of 2020 when COVID arrived, and all but 3 were based in the DC area. We now have over 130, including a dozen in Canada, another dozen or so in California, and a bunch of others sprinkled throughout the United States. And I'm sure what you guys are seeing is that, geography doesn't matter as much as it did anymore. It's giving us an opportunity to expand our net and our market. Even me as a financial advisor, I think the expectation with my local clients, which I really only had local clients for the most part going into COVID, was that they were going to come into my office and we were going to have a meeting. And I would say that 90% of my clients right now, even though meeting in person is on the table, they're preferring and they're opting for a Zoom conversation, which means I can now potentially work with people in Iowa or in Montana or in some other state or region. And so, I think that geography is less important. And for the in-person events that we do, and we host a large in-person event typically once a quarter, we are focusing on bringing in the type of speaker and the type of ancillary events that will attract our Canadian members, our members on the West Coast, to want to come in to this part of the region for a couple of days on a quarterly basis. So I'm excited because now, before I had to sort of just look at people in this area in terms of who do I want to work with and who I want to spend time with. And now I get to cast a much larger net, which means it's more likely I'm going to find people that I really enjoy working with and that I really want to support.
It's been very exciting. I think it's a number of different fields and industries have kind of seen this breakdown in geographic barriers that you've described. Mark, Derek has kind of talked a little bit how his membership and activities have pivoted or expanded or changed as a result of COVID. How has COVID, the last several years of operating kind of under COVID, impacted AEG?
Yeah, well, it's interesting that every time there's a giant disruption in society and culture, people are pretty good at adapting. Not everybody, but members are really good having established their relationships in the past. We spend a lot of time developing many different touch points of members, so they get to be good personal friends as well as professional colleagues. We grew by 50% between 20 and 21, and we'll triple again this year. People are more and less tolerant of virtual at the same time. Getting them together, they say, well, I could do it on Zoom. Why should I go sit down with people? Other people are saying, I've been on so many Zoom calls, I feel like a zombie. I need to get out and have the personal touch. So being able to provide people what they want. Derek talked about members wanting more or less of certain things. We can still provide the virtual options for many through our power groups, but the getting together periodically for social professional development and monthly meetings has been really important for people. It's hard to kick them out at the end of the night.
In terms of just, again, you've both been in the region for a long time. And so again, you've seen things come and go and trends. How have you seen, if you look back to this area, how have you seen the networking landscape in Baltimore and DMV and change over the last 5 to 10 years? COVID, you've talked about a few things. What are some of the other kind of major trends that you've seen and changes that you've seen happen in your area? Derek?
Yeah, so most of our members are still based in this area, and I don't know if it's specific to this area or if we're seeing it sort of all over the place. But I'll just sort of go back to COVID again, because I think that was such a pivotal moment in a shift for all of us as a society. And what I've been seeing for the past couple of years from most people in my network is this collective wanting to opt out of whatever we've been doing in pretty much every area of our life. So whether it's business, whether it's relationships with our spouse or significant other, whether it's parenting, whether it's spirituality, I think that most people that I see are raising their hand. They're saying, whatever we've been doing, I think there's a better way to do it. And I'm excited about continuing to lean into, I don't know that anyone has an answer. I just know that everyone is sort of suggesting that I don't want to go back to the way that we were doing it before. And so, for example, I agree 1,000% that if you let me have my pick, I want to be in person. I want to be meeting people. I want to be hugging people. I want that in-person interaction. But now I think part of the equation is the caliber of the people that you're meeting and you're interacting with, because I would still, all things being equal, rather be in person. But if you're telling me that I get to spend time on Zoom with a certain type of professional or a certain type of person that is going to be more helpful to me, that I can contribute to, that I can impact more, then I'd much rather spend my time at my house in my pajamas having a conversation with that person than in person meeting with people that are not the type of person that I'm going to jive with or be able to support as well.
Mark, what have you found as some of the biggest changes you've seen over this last 5 to 10 years in the networking area?
Yeah, building on Derek's point is that virtual access to people has sort of expanded. It's like globalization was thought to be a bad thing, but actually it's a good thing for some people. So, our members are, we can provide integrated expertise, sort of locally based, but remotely available, and finding the right people. So now that our catchment area has been expanded, we have opportunities to access people that we might not have before. And the fact that our membership is diverse intentionally, So we're looking for diverse industries. So I might now have access to the cyber industry or life sciences or hospitality that I wouldn't have before. And the other thing is that our members are really vetted because they are growth oriented. We're delivering services to help businesses and communities grow. That's the same thing. So we're very careful about selecting members that are consistent with our values. And our values, we have 4 values, and the sequence is important of give first. We're looking for people who want to contribute to others, do great work, that they are recognized in their community for being excellent at what they do, live passionately, that they believe that what they actually do makes a big difference. And the last one is have fun. So we want people who are not sourpusses, but engaging, enjoyable people.
When you're talking about how the things that you've been providing to your customers and clients, and you started off at the very beginning, Mark, saying, there's a lot of players in the space. Some have been around, some are filling niches, some have been around for a long time, a short time. How do you guys innovate in terms of raising the bar of your member services and your product development? How do you kind of approach that innovation to continue to add more and more value to your customers and clients?
This is really a deliberate part of our strategy, is that we have this diverse membership base. They have no shortage of ideas, and in their own particular disciplines, as well as the industries they're in. They're diverse to some extent, geographically, so they have a finger on the pulse of the various communities, both industry and geographically. And it's a real focus. We make the point to members and have conversations with them about, what can we do better? And just like Derek asked, what do you want more or less of? We do the same thing because, what do they needed? What do their clients need that we can provide as an organization, as individuals?
Derek, how are you guys innovating?
So I would say sometimes our members get what they want. Sometimes they get what they need. Sometimes it's like taking vitamins, so to enhance something that they're already doing well. And sometimes we feel like we're giving them medicine. And I think at the end of the day, like regardless of what it is, we want to make sure that they're always getting a dose of what's good for them while they're participating in Cadre. And, one nice thing about the virtual aspect is that there's really no cost to experimenting with different types of events. And so while we were predominantly business focused all the way up until COVID, maybe a year or two before, we had a lot of our members saying, I'm not feeling great right now, and I'm kind of lonely, and I'm kind of sad, and I would like to be able to talk to other people that might be feeling this way also. And so we've added more heart-centered, more spirit-centered, more more big picture focused conversations. And it's not in place of the business stuff, but again, because it doesn't cost us anything to schedule an extra 1 or 2 Zoom sessions a month to talk about these different areas. It gives our members more of a menu to choose from, if you will. And, even though we are right now we have more members than we've ever had, we've lost about 10 or 12 members over the past 6 months. And all of them more or less said the same thing. We liked it better when it was just business. And that's fine. And I also understand and appreciate that that's also code for they don't like being vulnerable. They don't want to talk about how they're feeling or what's going on. And that's totally okay with us. But again, leaning into this, looking for a better way to do things. We've been experimenting. We've been using the trust that we've earned with our members to try to bring topics and conversations to the table that we feel like would be beneficial for them. So in March, we hosted Dan Pink to speak on his latest New York Times bestseller, The Power of Regret. If we were to have asked our members, what do you want to hear? What do you want to learn more about? I don't think anyone's raising their hand to say, how do I handle my regrets better? But that was a pretty moving and very impactful session. The one that we have coming up in September, we're bringing in a PhD, a best-selling author to talk about how leaders navigate grief. Grief is one of these things. I think a lot of us have experienced it recently. A lot of us have probably experienced it at some point in our lives. They don't talk to us about that in school. They don't talk to us about it when we go to college. And we typically don't talk to it at business events, but it's a very real thing. And I think the expectation, especially in business, is that, your dad dies on Sunday and you're supposed to show up to work on Tuesday and be ready to go as if nothing happened. And so we're going to introduce a topic that might not be fun, that might not be something that people are chomping at the bit to hear more about, but one that I think is really important and will hopefully impact their lives and the lives of all the people that they lead.
There is so much that you're both doing and so much value that you bring into your clients. It's really amazing.
I just want to add something else. So both structurally and within the organization, it's sometimes hard for organizations. Like Derek said, okay, this is what we're going to do. Everybody's going to sort of march in line. We're going to talk about grief. We're going to talk about regrets, et cetera. Within the organization, within each chapter has their own personality. From month to month, they can change the focus of what they want to talk about. We also started, it's AEG is really two parts. One is the lead advisors in all these complementary disciplines. The other is called the Inner Circle, and it's a group of CEOs of 20 million plus companies. And those conversations are slightly different. It's not about business development. It's very much about personal, science, history, culture, et cetera. So those two groups can be advisory to each other. So there's a lot of room for innovation.
Can I add one more thing to that too? I went to a conference, an entrepreneur conference that, for my money, is the best annual conference to go to. It's called Mastermind Talks. And it's about 150 CEOs and entrepreneurs from all over the globe. And it's really interesting, like talking about business while I was there for 4 days. It was almost like talking about religion or politics. Hardly anybody wanted to talk about business. And it was a way to sort of just stop the conversation in its tracks. People were talking about parenting. People were talking about relationships. People were talking about mortality, just all sorts of things. That it's really, really interesting, Mark, to hear you say that, because that's been my experience lately as well.
Thank you guys for that first part of our podcast today. And I am going to hand it back to Tien.
Great. Thank you, Anthony. So I had a couple of questions for Mark and Derek. We have some event managers and chambers and other groups that are doing events. And I think the pandemic's changed a lot, right? So people are, and we do events, so we hear this. People are much more selective about the events they attend, the groups that they join. And attendance has been down across the board, even though we're kind of getting to the other side of the pandemic. But how are Cadre and AEG dealing with this sort of phenomenon in terms of your business model and your expansion plans into the future? Mark, I know you have some global domination plans for AEG, so maybe we can start with you.
So I started thinking about the hybrid events. We get the people who want to be, who are COVID safe versus the COVID reluctant. It's a very difficult opportunity. It's easier when everybody's remote. Otherwise, if half the people are remote, they're in the meeting but not of the meeting. And you can talk among yourselves. It's a very unsatisfactory experience. So we've ended our hybrid events and to focus on either just remote or just in person. We don't have remote chapters right now. We're starting chapters in individual cities, and we are going to knit them together. I'm a recovering biologist, so I understand and appreciate what ecosystem actually means, not the way it's bandied about now. But it's really sort of a complex adaptive system where the components interact with each other and evolve to reach some kind of long-term equilibrium. Not that there won't be perturbations over time, but each city is going to have their own culture, their own specifics, but they're going to be in the same tribe. And that makes it possible to have the conversations, like Derek said, about vulnerability and mortality and other things. So we'll get there, but it's a work in process.
For us, I would say we typically, in any given month, and just like Mark, by the way, we are quote unquote hybrid, but we never do anything that allows for adhering to both. So it's either all virtual or all in person. Yeah. If it's in person, we're recording the speaker. Our members who were not there will be able to watch the video later if they'd like. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, we have 3 or 4 things per month typically for people to choose from, and if it's 4, 3 of them are virtual. And I don't think any of our members come to everything that we do. I think that some of our members like the smaller. They're in a group with 5 people for 2 hours working through a personal or professional challenge, and then others love coming to the big live in-person events. we only need typically most of our members to do one thing a month in order for them to get value. So I don't know that if attendance, I'll be curious to see what happens in September, because September with our in-person event, September is usually a really good event for being in person. I'll be curious to see how it plays out. But overall, I think our attendance in terms of the things people are showing up for has been maintaining. I was really concerned 6-9 months ago that the Zoom, the virtual stuff was going to lose its luster. But it seems like it's still working for us now, and we're still having a lot of people turn up for those events.
That's really interesting. I know with CONNECTpreneur, the online, we're down about 20 to 25% over where we were last year. And the in-person, we did an event in July, we did one in May. Those events are down about 35-40% from pre-pandemic levels. So, our team has to step it up. We got to do better, deliver better product, even though it's pretty good already. But I have a question for you guys. So you're both very engaged in the community, and you have a lot of members who are super engaged in the community. Based on recent anecdotal experience with some of your members, what is your guys' general sentiment on the DMV regional economy, say, over the next 2 or 3 years? Derek, we'll start with you, since you're sort of the financial guru here.
Yeah, I would say, I don't know that my views on the economy are different for this area than they are just for the country and the globe in general. I think it's really hard to tell. I do think this globalization effect is going to continue to take off. I think that, one thing that I am doing now is I'm about 80% done with my second book, which is about retiring, the concept of retirement. I realized the best thing that I think I've done collectively for the majority of my wealth management clients is help them come to the realization that they're not going to be happy doing nothing for 30 years. And I think a lot of people are focused on putting their head down and I have to hit this number by a certain age, and they're ignoring the relationships that they have, the friendships that they have. They're ignoring taking care of their personal health. And so I think from an economic standpoint, I think that finding ways to continue to work with people that you really enjoy working with, and also getting comfortable with the idea that if you like what you're doing and you're good at it, that you're probably not going to want to stop. And so if there is a blip in the economy, if people start spending less, if things really tighten up, I would just encourage people to look at this, and maybe they get a little bit of a relief knowing that, hey, it's okay. I didn't grow my business these last 2 years because I'm going to do this until I'm 75 or 78 or 82 years old. And so I can allow myself to not feel the pressure that I might have felt otherwise if I felt like I had to have a certain money by a certain age. So, it's just tricky, man. Like I have to, I don't have any strong opinions about where we're going. And I know I didn't directly answer your question, but hopefully that's helpful.
Oh, that's okay. And no, that's great. I appreciate that, Derek. And Mark, I know you got a lot of CEOs and top tier service providers and banks. What are you hearing out there?
Well, now that I know not answering the question directly is an acceptable response, I'll weigh in. I think it's still going to be very uneven, both geographically and by industry. Geographically, Jack McDougall of Board of Trade showed me where the wealth and income is, and over 90% of the growth is west of the river. And it's it's shocking. Even in Montgomery County, it's a slow slog compared to Northern Virginia. So I think that trend is going to continue. Certainly by industry, GovCon, where a lot of Northern Virginia, a lot of GovCons exist, technology, life sciences, hospitality is coming back. Small businesses, those that survived, are still struggling. But certainly, any company that's tech enabled in the least amount, that sort of figured out that, we can be more efficient, more cost efficient, reach more people, just like AEG and Cadre are reaching out to other cities. Those companies will thrive. Those that take up the technologies that make up the metaverse. I just wrote a note about, everybody ought to be on the metaverse. It's kind of like, oh, the internet, that's not a big thing, or social media, that's not a big thing. Well, it turns out, those things are big things because they affect those of your customers and your colleagues that you need to be in tune with. So I think if anything, either a fundamental source of income like the federal government, or a source of expense reduction like technology is really going to be the make the winners in the economy. And it doesn't have to be huge companies. It can be small companies that do small things that make their services more efficient and more tech-enabled.
Yeah, no, I mean, I totally agree with you. I mean, we're very fortunate to be living in this sort of metroplex with the federal government, the biggest spender, and lots of other companies. It's sort of not inflation-proofed us or bulletproofed us, but certainly helps a lot, especially compared with other regions around the U.S. And also, as a credit to both of you fine gentlemen, you have built amazing communities in probably the toughest city in the world to build communities, because there's a million networking groups, a million networking events, and credit to you guys. We're almost out of time. So final question, how can our viewers get involved with Cadre? How can they get involved with AEG? Derek?
Yeah, so we're in the process of rebranding our website right now. It still has a lot of information on there. Many years ago, and Cadre really is a passion project for us. I think one of the reasons why we've been able to maintain such a high caliber of member from a curation perspective is because, the wealth management business for me always paid the bills. And especially now that I've sold, I'm not independently wealthy, but I'm okay. And I don't need anybody's $500 a month, to pay my mortgage or to fund my kids' college education. And so I think that for us, we're trying to actively turn people away when they come to our website. When we first started Cadre, our members would say, "Hey, I want you to meet this person. They're great. You should talk to them." And I would say, "Okay." And then we'd have lunch for an hour. And at the end of the lunch, it seemed like it was going great. They would say, "Okay, now how much is it again?" And then I would tell them, they would say, "Oh," and you can't get that time back. And so, little shout out to Marcus Sheridan. He calls this assignment selling, right? Which is somebody shows interest. And what Marcus says is that if you clearly define who you are a good fit for on your website and who is not a good fit for you, and you disclose cost information, then you have the right to say, "I'm not going to meet you for lunch," right? And it's not about you personally, but it's to say, "I value my time. I value your time. If you spend 15 minutes on my website, you can learn everything you need to learn about us." And, about 75% of the people that go to our website after they get referred by a member, they don't apply. Of the 25% that do apply, we vet them. About half of those people we'll have a conversation with, but it's just, it's a really nice position for us to be in. And for years, I just paid lip service to why are the quality of your members so good? The same way a company would pay lip service to having great customer service. Well, you just have to become a customer to find out. But really, it's the fact that we're not in a place of need, and we can be selective about who we're working with. And I'm pretty confident that if Cadre was my only gig, that I wouldn't have the courage and the confidence to say, you're a great fit or you're not a great fit. I would probably make more exceptions. And it's so I've been blessed to be in a position where we don't have to do that. And so, yeah, like our website has a lot of information on it. We're not trying to hide anything. We're trying to let you very clearly know who we think would be a good fit and who would not be a good fit.
Great. I think that the key ingredients, excellent ingredients, are what makes both of your organizations excellent, and the focus on quality as well. Mark, how can people get involved with AEG?
Well, the best thing, like Derek, we are not focused on our website or inbound marketing. Actually, there's no SEO on the website. It's just up there as a brochure. Our membership is a lot of times based on member-to-member referrals, because they actually know, what the experience is like, what value it is, and we then vet those people according to our values and others. And we're really transitioning into a place where it's we want people to come to us rather than going out and chasing them. So we're just at that inflection point, and that's a good place to be. It's where every business wants to be, is just sit back and wait for the customers to come. So we have to be a little clearer about what the value proposition is. And I agree. Here's what the deal is. As my wife, who's an executive coach, says, she tells people, this is how it works. This is not a negotiation. This is what we offer. I know what you're looking for. If it's a match, fine. I'm not going to proselytize or harass you about membership. If you're a good fit, we think you're a good fit, and it's okay with you, then we'll give it a try. And like Derek said, some people didn't like certain parts of it. That's fine. There are plenty of other places to land.
Love it. Great advice, great feedback, great influence. I want to thank you both for being so pillars of our community and really building, groups of fantastic, remarkable people. And it's a great honor for me to be associated with both of you. You're both very good friends of mine, very dear friends. And thank you for coming on the podcast. I'd like to turn things over to Anthony, who'll close out.
Great. Thanks, Tien. And I also want to thank you, Mark and Derek, for joining us today. I started off by saying that this ability to connect to other people and to network is one of the engines that drives our ecosystem that we hear about over and over again. And both of you as leaders and innovators in that area help drive that as well. So thank you both for all that you do. And thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Anthony.
Thanks, Anthony. Thanks, Tien.
Thanks, Mark. Good seeing
Good
you.
to see you.
You guys
Good
are
to
the
see you.
best. Thank you so much.